What's going on, guys? Exciton Elimination 20 has just wrapped up, and as always, you know I am coming at you guys with the update on the event. We're going to look over what decks entered, as well as go over the first and second place deck list from this event, see if there's any cool trends or cool decks that actually ended up topping, and just talk about the event in general. If you guys are new to the channel, as H.A.T format has been picking up a lot lately, Exciton Elimination is a online H.A.T format tournament that is held through the H.A.T Alliance Discord server and then played on Dueling Book. If you guys are interested in playing in events like this or several of the other online H.A.T format tournaments that go on throughout the month, definitely go down to the video description and you can find a link to the H.A.T Alliance Discord server. I definitely suggest you going and checking that out, whether you want to talk about different H.A.T decks and theories and, you know, how to build your deck, or again, enter events like this. There's a Mortal Monthly that just started. There's the Duelist Crown tournament that's going to be taking place on the Format Library Discord server. So there's another H.A.T format tournament that's going to be going on soon. Not to mention the NAWCQ is coming up, and there's going to be a H.A.T side event. So there's definitely a lot of H.A.T content and things that are going to be coming soon, and you're going to want to make sure to pay attention to that. So if you haven't already subscribed, take a second, go down, subscribe to the channel, and drop a like on this video so that I know you guys are interested in all of these tournament reports and things like that. But without further ado, let's actually get started at looking at this event. So starting out, this event had 14 players actually enter. Again, there's all these other events that just started today, as well as coming up in the future, and in general have been going on around this one. So it makes sense why there was the lower number. In general, usually the bigger one is going to be the Mortal Monthly anyways, but there's still a ton of really good players that enter the Exciton Elimination. So don't get me wrong, even though there's not that many players in this one, there definitely are some top tier players for H.A.T format. So going over the decks that actually entered, we see a good amount of color here, so you know there was a solid amount of diversity. There were 2 Mermail decks, 2 Artifact Traptrix variants, 1 Mythic Ruler, 1 Artifact Spirit, 1 Constellar, 1 Madolche, 1 Madolche Artifact, 1 Infernity, 1 other, I'm not entirely sure what this one is, 1 Bujin, 1 Constellar Artifact, and 1 Evilswarm. So right away, the thing that I'm noticing is, 1, obviously Artifact Traptrix is one of the top represented decks, the second being Mermail. And what's interesting is, similar to one of the last events, I don't entirely remember which one it is, there was no Geargia present, which is very interesting, as well as I'm seeing there was, no Spellbook either? So interesting to see that. No Sylvan, but we do see Infernity actually popped up, which we hadn't seen for a little while, as well as we saw 2 different Madolche decks, one being just Madolche, I'm not sure if it was Madolche Hands or anything, and 1 Madolche Artifact, so that is really cool to see. I have always kind of said that Madolche feels like a deck with a ton of potential, so seeing that people are willing to, you know, test it out and play it a little more is pretty cool. We see Artifact Spirit, which I believe actually got, I want to say, 3rd place in this event, so I won't have their deck list for this, but if I am remembering correctly, that is really cool to see as well. There was the 1 Mythic Ruler, Evilswarm popping up, so overall, like, a good mix of decks, honestly. You guys can let me know what you think in the comment section, but as I mentioned, very interesting to see no Geargia or Spellbook, but, you know, seeing Mermail has been doing very well lately, so we will see if it did anything in this event, but overall, good spread of decks, and let's take a look at what got first and second. So in first place and second place, we had Tempest and Extra Power, 2 players that are definitely no new face to the H.A.T scene. These are 2 players that do very well in a lot of different events, especially Extra Power has been on a reign lately, but here I see that they're on Evilswarm, so actually switching it up from Bujin from what we are used to seeing, and Tempest was on Artifact Traptrix. I believe they were on C.A.T. Obviously, I am a fan of the C.A.T deck, so I am excited to take a look at that. Also, just again, seeing that Extra Power was on Evilswarm is something very different, so, you know, actually being able to go over a new deck list from them is something I look forward to. But yeah, C.A.T got first place. I believe it's C.A.T, don't quote me on it, but in Artifact Traptrix variant in general got first place, and second place was Evilswarm. Evilswarm was very close to moving up in tiers in terms of just a ranking system. And so getting another top, that is very impressive. But without further ado, let's actually take a look at these deck lists. So here we have the first place deck list, and as I mentioned, it is going to be the C.A.T deck, which is, obviously card, artifact, trap tricks, and a couple things stand out right away. The first of which is obviously they are choosing the double Beagle tech over one Beagle tech and one Scythe, and the other thing is this ratio of hand traps they're playing, being 1 DD Crow and 2 copies of Max C. Lately, there has been a few more decks that are playing a combination of 3 hand traps overall. For a while, some C.A.T builds actually dropped the hand traps, and then also for a little while, they just sort of played like 2 and 2 or something along those lines. So seeing that they are on 3 hand traps and it's being a combination like that, we had seen in a couple events ago a lot of Geargia decks playing sort of similar ratios of hand traps. I guess maybe it's just for the sake of having 3 hand traps as like flex spots. And obviously Crow is really good and Max C is really good, but it's a little less good, I feel, into certain matchups. For example, like Bujins and stuff like that. But I guess having the combination, you'd rather see a Max C get a draw and potentially draw into the Crow, but if you see the Crow, it's equally as good. Other than that, seeing, a ratio like this for the trap, seeing 2 breakthrough skill and 2 fiendish chain is a little interesting. Usually C.A.T will play something like just 1 breakthrough skill or even up to 2 breakthrough skill and not really playing fiendish chain. This almost feels closer again to like a Geargia list where they usually play multiple fiendish chain and multiple copies of breakthrough. So that is pretty cool to see. Also, I'm seeing that they are on Book of Moon and only 1 copy of double cyclone. So they kind of cut down on the double cyclones, though I will say some artifact variants have gone with just 1 double cyclone, as you don't really want to see this unless you hard open some artifacts or the ignitions. So I guess that's also pretty all right. But overall, let's quickly go through the deck list here and we can see the side deck and extra deck afterwards. So as I mentioned, 2 copies of Beagle Tech and 3 copies of Moral Tech, 3 copies of Card D, 1 DD Crow, 2 Max C, 2 Dionea, and 3 copies of Mermail. So overall, very good monster lineup. For the spells, we see 3 copies of Ignition, 1 Book of Moon, 1 Double Cyclone, 3 Duality, and 2 copies of Soul Charge. Some builds like 1, but I could see, obviously, I kind of see the hands here, so having 2 copies of Soul Charge makes a lot more sense in this exact case. For the trap cards, we see 3 copies of Sanctum, 1 Bottomless, 2 Breakthrough Skill, 2 Call the Haunted, 1 Compulse, 2 Fiendish Chain, 1 Solemn Warning, 1 Torrential, and 1 Trap Tricks, Trap Hole Nightmare. All of that looks pretty good, besides the couple things that I mentioned, but that doesn't even look bad. It's just a little bit different. Looking at the side deck, we see 1 more copy of Crow and 1 more copy of Max C. So obviously, in between the main deck and side deck, they do have 3 Max C and only 2 Crow, so prioritizing the Max Cs over the Crows, which I believe in my C.A.T build, I am currently playing 3 Max C and 2 Crow, so it kind of adds up to the same ratio overall. After that, 2 copies of Firehand and 2 copies of Icehand. I really like this, as the C.A.T deck kind of, especially against H.A.T, has a really hard time applying pressure, so being able to side into the hands is very important, and seeing that the second place deck was Evilswarm, it's probably pretty good that they had the hands, as the hands really tear apart the Evilswarm deck. After that, we see 1 copy of Double Cyclone as the only spell. Obviously, in certain matchups, you probably do want to have this, especially in the grindier matchups, you want to have more back row removal. For the traps in the side, we see 2 copies of Blackhorn, 3 copies of DNA Surgery, and 3 copies of Debunk. All very solid cards and stuff that you're usually going to see in side decks for most decks, so nothing too out of the ordinary there. For the extra deck, we see 1 Dweller, 1 Durendal, 2 copies of Constellar Pleiades, 1 M7, 1 copy of Emerald, 1 Exciton, 1 Gaia Dragon, 1 copy of Honor Arc, 1 Ragna Zero, 1 Black Ship, 1 Volcasaurus, 1 Heartland Draco, 1 copy of Tyrus, and 1 copy of Zenmayo. Overall, very standard for the most part. I think from playing this deck a little more, one thing that I've kind of wanted to try finding room for is something like a Diamond Direwolf, but I feel there's not really a specific card I would want to cut out of the list. And so seeing that, they also went with pretty much a standard list for the extra deck, it also kind of confirms, it's just really hard to find the space for that. But overall, very great list. Congrats to this player on getting first place. And let's go and take a look at that second place list. So here we have the Evilswarm deck list, and right away I notice a lot of things that are different with this list compared to others. The first thing standing right out at me is the Evilswarm Salamandra. This card really never sees play. It basically just has an effect that allows you to, I think it's like banish from the graveyard or the hand Evilswarm monsters, or maybe it's monsters in general. I think it's Evilswarms, to increase its attack points for each one banished, and I think it's like up to twice per turn or something like that. And this, while it doesn't seem like it's the greatest card in this deck, I am seeing that they are on triple copies of Fossil Dig, my apologies, and Salamandra is a dinosaur, so pretty much what this means is they're using the Fossil Digs to kind of get an extra name so that they can guarantee go into an Ophion or something like that really quickly moving forward. So basically, if they see something like a Mandragora or they see something like the Caster or something, then they can just easily make sure they have enough names for it. The other thing is the triple copies of Upstart Goblin, which means they really are just trying to make this deck as consistent as possible with getting to Ophion, or in general just getting to a rank 4. And with that being said, I believe it looks like they kind of are playing a lower count of trap cards, so really just focusing on the rank 4 toolbox that Evilswarm can easily get into. So that is like the big thing that's standing out to me. A lot more lists have been kind of going with Upstart. Even since I did my deck profile, I've since added Upstart into my build, and it's been working pretty decent overall, but in general, that is the main thing I'm noticing with this, so let's go through the card by card. First off, we have 3 copies of Heliotrope, 3 copies of Caster, 3 copies of Kyrkion, 3 copies of Mandragora, the 2 copies of Salamandra, the 1 copy of Rescue Rabbit, and 2 copies of Skullmeister. Obviously, again, during H.A.T format, Skullmeister can activate in damage step, and how I mentioned previously that this deck has a very hard time against the hands, this is a very good card to be able to deal with that, as well as just being a level 4 monster, a dark, and having 1700 attack. It gives you kind of a hand trap that can also count as a beater or even part of a combo piece if need be. For the spells, we see the 1 copy of Allure, 1 Dark Hole, 2 copies of Chalice, 3 Fossil Dig, 3 Pandemic, 2 copies of MST, the 1 Rhoda to search the caster, 3 copies of Upstart, and for the traps, 1 Bottomless, 3 copies of Breakthrough Skill, the 1 Infestation Infection, 1 Warning, and 1 Torrential. Overall, a very clean list. A little interesting with those cards that I mentioned, but overall, it looks pretty cool, and I actually kind of want to try this out. I do like the concept of the Fossil Dig and Salamandra here. Looking at the side deck, they chose to play 2 copies of Crow and 3 copies of Max C, so very similar ratios in terms of Max Cs to Crows that we saw in the last list. They have 1 copy of Crazy Box, obviously being a really good card if your opponent is on any sort of skill drain deck, 1 copy of Dimensional Fissure, 1 Mind Control, and the 3rd copy of MST. This deck usually can play a lot of Floodgates, and we kind of see it at the end here. So seeing that they're at least siding them for when going first and making sure it's versatile is very good. We see the 2 copies of Debunk, again, just more ways to deal with the hands. The 2 Light Imprisoning Mirror, we've been seeing this card pop up a little more, and I always say I really think that this card has a lot of potential, especially moving forward in the format. It just hits so many of the top decks, even hitting some of the extra deck stuff like opponents opposing copies of Exciton Knight and other cards like that. Very, very strong. We see the one copy of Macro, kind of pairing with the D-Fissure here, and then the one copy of Soul Drain, just, it's a great card stopping any of those graveyard effects. Overall, very good to see, and looking at the extra deck, we see one copy of Dweller, one Diamond Direwolf, one Bahamut, two copies of Exciton, three copies of Ophion, one copy of Cowboy, one 101, one Ragna Zero, one Black Ship, one copy of Key Beetle, one Ragna Zero, or not Ragna Zero, Rhapsody and Berserk, my apologies, and the one copy of Heartland Draco. Overall, very good list. Really cool, again, to see extra power on something other than Bujins and actually being able to go over this and seeing it as, not even a standard list. So they kind of put their spin on it, which is very nice to see. But overall, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Again, let me know what you thought of this event in the comments section down below. I would love to hear your guys' opinion and if you're excited for all these different hat tournaments coming up and the idea that more content will be coming up. I've really been working double time to kind of get all this stuff out to you guys as quickly as possible. But if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it, comment any questions or videos you want to see in the future, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to get notified anytime I put a new video out, share this video with your friends, and anyways, guys, I will see you in the next video.